Call the June 23rd, 2022 emergency meeting of the Westwood School Committee meeting to order. I want to thank everybody for joining us at such short notice. We will begin the meeting with a roll call attendance. Anthony Mullin. Tony.
Here.
Amanda Phillips.
Here.
Mayor Plotkin.
Here.
And Dori Parmelee.
Here.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize the live stream of the meeting available online at www.westwoodk12mass.us live to provide real-time public access to the activities of the school committee in accordance with an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. I'd like to now get to our discussion and move that to Emily.
Thanks, Charlie. So we're here today to talk about potentially using funds that are in an account that we refer to as our mitigation funding, and specifically to talk about whether or not the committee would consider using those funds as part of the school building project. So May, I don't know if you want to introduce sort of the situation first. And
Sure, thank you. So as you guys know, market conditions have changed dramatically in the past 6 months, even just from February. Just as a reminder, when because you were all on the SBC in December, when we did a 60% estimate, we came in on budget. When we did that same cost estimate in February at 90% with minimal design changes, we were short a significant amount. So even just between December and February, there was a huge change. For example, electrical costs increased by $1 million in those few months for the project. And what we have seen now is that between February and June, there have been even more significant increases. So I think we're all experiencing this in our own lives, you know, gas prices, food prices, but it has come to bear on the project, the Hanlon Deerfield project, in that we went out to bid on the project yesterday, and the bids came in. And even with the buffer that we had created, that the SBC had created in anticipation of a potential overage, we are still around $3 million short of the ideal project. It basically, I really kind of hate to say this, but it was almost worst case scenario yesterday in terms of keeping the project alive. So it was not a good day. And we have all sort of been thinking about, you know, where we go from here. So we think we can get close to where, and we're going to be going through these numbers and discussing it tomorrow at the SBC, but just looking at the numbers very quickly, we think we can get close to where we need to be with some adjustments to the amount of the contingency that we're carrying and making some choices about the alternates that we have. We think we still have a viable project if we have $2 million in additional funding for the project. Ideally, we have the 3, but we think we still could have a viable project at 2. There will be a little bit of pain, but it's still viable. And what is clear to us, though, that without the additional $2 million in funding, that moving the project forward at this time will be very difficult. So as Emily mentioned, as you know, the district has around $2 million in mitigation money that it received in connection with the University Station development. And Emily, do you want to just speak a little bit to the history of that money?
Sure. So we keep referring to the mitigation fund. It refers to payments that were made to the school department as part of the development of University Station. And the intention of that money, it was sort of, it was money paid by the developer, and the intention was to provide funds to mitigate the impact of the University Station development on the school department in the event that the enrollment from the new housing stock exceeded the range that was projected in the fiscal impact study that was conducted back in 2013. As we've talked about before, in fact, the student enrollment from the development has it hasn't even reached the low end of that projected range. So at the time, the projection was for the Gables that we might see an increase of between 49 and 63 students, and then up to 12 additional students from University Place. The enrollment today from both of those addresses is 38. So we really haven't had to access that money to mitigate the impact of the housing stock. And so instead, we have really saved the money for a rainy day. Its use is not restricted, so it's something that is up to the school committee to determine its use.
Thanks. So as Emily mentioned, we have sort of steadfastly held on to this money. Over the past few years, we certainly have heard a lot of suggestions about how we could use the money. But we were really keeping it, as she said, for a rainy day. I think that these current market conditions, unfortunately, have generated the rainy day, the storm, in my opinion. And so really what we are here to do is to discuss whether the school committee is willing to consider using these funds for the building project. We're not looking for a vote today. It's $2 million. It's a lot of money. I don't want to force people into a quick vote on that. But we are going into an SBC meeting tomorrow to discuss the bids. Now, again, in the SBC meeting, we're not going to, it's not likely that we're going to vote on accepting a bid tomorrow, given the numbers. In fact, we have 30 days to accept a bid, so we do have some time. And I think there needs to be a lot of analysis done in the numbers and a lot of sort of options, strategy planning going on. But if the school committee is completely opposed to using the mitigation money for the Hanlon Deerfield project, then that will be a very different conversation tomorrow at SBC than it would be if the school committee indicates today that it is willing to use those funds. Now, I think we would certainly have to tap into some of them to get to where we need to be. Do we have to use all of them? I don't know. I mean, honestly, our cost estimating has been so all over the place in this project because this market is so all over the place. But I think that the safe bet is to discuss using the entire amount toward the project. And then at the end of the day, sort of cross our fingers and hope that, we wouldn't have to use that entire amount. But we have had the funds for a while. There have been a number of suggestions on a way to use them. And this is the biggest project the school district really has done. And so I do think that, in my opinion, it's an appropriate use of these funds. We do have to use them at some point, right? We thought maybe COVID would be that place, but we were able to work through COVID without touching them. But as I said, if we can't find a source of additional 2 million, then I'm not sure the project is viable. So I will stop talking. Unless and answer any questions anybody has.
Can someone just review them, because I want to make sure I have them. Leave aside the 2 million for a second. I understand the numbers. So what's the 3 million over? What is like the contingency, the dollar amount? What does it mean? Maybe just review the numbers, because I'm not. Yeah, that would be helpful. I think for me it is.
Sure. So our budget as of May 31st, for construction, and this is what we're talking about now, only construction, because the rest of the costs, that's what the bid is for, right? The bid came in for construction. So our construction budget as of May 31st was $70,380,000. The lowest bid that we got yesterday was $73,900,000. So almost $4 million over. As I mentioned, if you recall, we had built in a buffer of $2 million into that on top of the 70. But the first million of that was value engineering that, we said we could take these if we want to. And clearly we're going to do those value engineering. The second million was alternates number 1 through 7. So that's how we got that buffer. So this 70 million was sort of without any of the alternates. So we were 4 million over just on the base bid, right? Without taking any of the alternates. If we take that 1 million of value engineering, then now we're just short, as I said, the $3 million. So it went from 70.3 to 73.9. Now that's with a contingency of 5%. If we lower the contingency, clearly we would have a lower gap I've spoken with John Cummings, and he is, and I think the PBC generally, and I too feel strongly that we do need to have a strong contingency. Do we need 5%? That's something for the SBC and the PBC to discuss. Could we go at some lower number? But as it stands now, as I mentioned, with the 5% contingency, which was in our base build, we are short. We're short 3 million. If we go with the lower contingency, if we go with 3.5%, then we're short 2 million.
Okay.
And we could, so that's why I'm saying, I think 3.5% contingency is a viable option, particularly if we're able to do some value engineering as we go through the project. But that's, it's not ideal. Ideally, we'd have 4%. So we'd have to think about that as well. But that's kind of where the numbers are. And we'll be, like I said, we'll be discussing them much more tomorrow at the SBC. So I would certainly encourage you guys to tune in and you'll really understand. But that's why I'm saying, sort of, if we don't have 2 million, then our contingency gets below an area that I'm comfortable with moving forward. I just think there's too many unknowns. We don't know if there's asbestos. And John, in John's history of sort of looking at, knocking down buildings, they've always found asbestos. We don't know how much ledge will hit. We just don't know. It's really the environmental conditions that are concerning us the most, because those are the ones that are typically the most unknown.
Thanks. That's helpful. Yeah, I don't know if you want to give thoughts. And I think, I guess what my thoughts are is, I'll leave it to what the SBCs, I think we want to, we do want to leverage this, I think, as a backstop. I think, to Maya's point, my only suggestion, I don't know how this actually works in progress, is that obviously keep the pressure on. When I say keep the pressure, not that you would, but like keep the pressure on. And, if we only need to use, if we don't need to use any of this, great, but everything works out perfectly, but that doesn't, life doesn't turn out that way. But, just keep the pressure on, the sense that if we only need to use 1 million of it, obviously, I'm not saying you would blow it otherwise, but that's, I guess, just keep the pressure on. But I'd be supportive of using this as a backstop, to the full amount if necessary. At least that's my view.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you for all the work you've been doing and looking into all these options. I think I'd be supportive of using the mitigation fund if we need to use it in the creative ways you've been suggesting. One of my issues is, are there things that are in the project that could be cut but rebuilt later? In other words, are there things that we could save money now but in the future put back in, if that's a possibility? And the other thing I would think is, in the current market situation you pointed out, I don't think it's going to end. So this may be the first of some other headaches that are going to come in a year or 2 or 3 from now. And what might they be, and at what year might we have what other problems? The contractor says I didn't get the stuff I needed, and it's out there. So are there other issues that we need to at least begin to prepare for, be aware of, and when might they happen? I think that would be valuable to begin thinking about it, at least, because I think the most difficult time to be putting up a building, any kind of building. And I think just if we could be prepared to come up with other creative solutions sometime down the road, this may not be the only one, but I'd say for the time being, I'd be supportive of using that money for that purpose. And as long as it wasn't meant to be for anything else, as long as it wasn't tied with the increase in students, but we could use it for anything. I think that's a very practical way to use it. And also to begin thinking about other things we might want to talk to the town about if other problems occur, that we're not going to be held back. There are other ways of getting another few $1 million. But, is there anything that if we needed to, that could be postponed and built later? That would be the only other thing I would say, that if that's possible to do it. But thanks for all the work you've put into it so far, looking into these possibilities. But I'd be very supportive of moving ahead with the mitigation money.
Thanks, Charlie. And you actually raised a good point. We didn't talk about what happens if we don't use the mitigation money, right? So if we don't use the mitigation money, I know I said that we don't think it's a viable project at this time. What we could do is we could just put the project on hold, revisit it in a year, and see, where we are. The issue with that, of course, is you're taking a huge risk. We do know it, while we are seeing signs of a recession, and typically recessions will hit, construction a little bit harder than some other areas, which could work to pricing advantages. We're not seeing signs of inflation going down. So, and that's really the fuel prices are what drives a lot of costs in construction. So we could, if we mothballed the project for a year, we could be back here in the same situation, but with higher costs and a delay that the administration hasn't planned for in terms of staffing. And so,
I think it's also just worth noting that, our funding agreement with the MSBA has timelines associated with it. And so we don't even know that we actually would be able to do that. We would have to go back to the MSBA and see if they would even agree to it.
Right. So I just did want to raise, to Charlie's issue, what happens if, because there is a cost to not moving forward.
Right.
And then in terms, Charlie, of your point.
Excuse me? I
We're
didn't,
going
I didn't, did you ask me a question?
I think Maya, you might be.
You're frozen.
You're frozen, Mayor. Yeah.
That beautiful Florida sea breeze.
Yes,
Disrupting connection.
It's a wind, too much sand.
Yeah.
Well, just on what Mayor was saying, I think, I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think things are going to be cheaper a year from now. And I think, delay is a good chance of having other hidden costs and other problems. So I'm not comfortable with, delaying, thinking things are going to get better, because I don't think they are going to get better. I think it would be good to move this along as much as we could. But just be prepared for problems that we just don't know about today. That I'd say if we get through this with this as the only problem, we'll be very lucky.
I agree with you, Charlie. I feel like based on everything I've heard, it doesn't seem like costs are going to go down, but I feel like a lot of people have been putting things off for a number of years, and you just kind of can't continue to do that. And the impact would be pretty significant, it seems like, to the district if we weren't able to move forward.
Hey, sorry guys, I think the Wi-Fi just died on me here.
We were blaming it on the ocean breeze. We thought maybe you moved out to the deck.
Oh God, I wish, actually I might do that. So anyway, I was just trying to say, to Charlie's point, we certainly will be looking for opportunities throughout the project. I think we do need to be mindful of the public bidding process. There are limitations with, with what we can do in terms of cutting things from the project, but there's certainly room for value engineering, and certainly things that we can look at putting in later. So.
Also, I think it might be valuable. I don't know about other school systems in the middle of a project like ours, who are probably going to be hit with similar problems as we go through. And there may be some value if there's 2 or 3 other systems doing something like this. What problems are they having? They may find something before we do, or solve it in a different way. So I think it'd be worth, if we could, find others that are going to be going through this process for the next few years, and there's just something out there that we can learn, or maybe teach them at the same time. But I don't know if there are similar groups that we should be coordinating with.
Well, from what I hear, unfortunately, we're the test case right now. We're the first ones out of the gate in this. I think there were some, that had bids back a few months ago when things weren't quite as wackadoo. But we, as far as we can tell, and as far as Compass has been able to tell us, we're the first ones kind of going out to bid in this new environment, in this new world. So I think actually, Charlie, people will be calling us and asking us what they can learn, and I'm just gonna say, well, cut. buffer. So that's where we are.
Any further questions?
I was just going to say, I support using the mitigation funds. I'm in agreement with that.
And the other thing I'll say, I'm not on that other committee anymore, but, I think, let's go. I think we should move forward. I think we should use the backstop and do as much as we can, because the reality is saying, oh, we're going to do something in 5 years. you're never gonna do it if you don't do it now. I mean,
Right.
I don't want to say never, but you know what I mean.
Right. And I mean, and the town has invested, the whole
Yeah.
town, not just the district, the town has invested already
Yeah.
so much into this project.
Yeah.
And I agree.
And
Speak to the, sorry,
We're losing you a little bit again.
all right, sorry.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Well, I think at this stage, you'd just like a sense, are we supportive of the mitigation using
Yeah.
it?
Yeah,
And
and-
can say that to the committee tomorrow, and
relay that.
we will, do I get a general sense of the committee without formally asking for a vote that we're supportive of moving ahead and using that if we need to? And thank you for all the time you're putting into this, and don't hesitate to call on us again. I'm sure there'll be many more situations like this, hopefully, not too many. But I'd like to see if anybody would like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
so moved.
Second,
Second,
and I'm just going to take a quick roll call for this. Tony,
Yay.
Amanda?
Yep.
Mayor,
Yes.
Dorothy?
Yes.
Thank you all for getting together
Thank
quickly.
you.
And
Thanks.
again, Mayor, thanks.
Bye.
Thank you again.